What don't I love about Miami and Miami-Dade County?
Everything from the beaches and the ocean to Biscayne Bay to the walkability of our city.
I love Miami because I was born here, I was raised here.
I love the diversity, I love the mix of cultures, any type of food that you want from anywhere in the world, you can get it here.
El Portal is so cultural and so diverse and has so many people from all different walks of life. It's a great community to be a part of.
You know, one of those, the product of, what you can become in this country.
Someone like me from the deep South in Alabama, and I meet Cuban friends here, and we learn to cook each other's food, and just enjoying that quality of life just can't be beat.
Occasionally at rush hour we get a little upset and a little crazy at rush hour, but other than that we're generally very nice.
Also, the cultural assets. We have the New World Symphony. The Bass Art Museum. Miami Beach has it all.
I am honored to stand before you as the first female mayor of Miami-Dade County.
Elected in the midst of a global pandemic, Mayor Daniela Levine Cava remains steadfast about tackling the challenges of these unprecedented times.
And I promise that I am ready. Estoy lista.
Florida has nearly 8,500 miles of coastline. Rising sea levels could disrupt the lives of the more than 2.7 million people living in Miami-Dade County. Finding solutions to turn the tide on the impact of climate change remains a pressing issue.
We are united in the struggle to rebuild and rebound our economy. And we are united by looming threats to the health of Biscayne Bay, the inescapable impacts of climate change, and the urgent need to protect our environment.
Biscayne Bay is at the heart of the economy for South Florida and is the environmental centerpiece for the region. Irela Bagay is Miami-Dade's first ever Chief Bay Officer and is tasked with protecting Biscayne Bay.
My work focuses on the recovery of Biscayne Bay, our most valuable natural and economic asset, and serves as our region's source of drinking water. This past summer, we experienced an unprecedented fish kill and algal bloom. And our scientists said that this event was largely due to the historic heat levels we experienced last year. And for us in Miami-Dade County, there is no question that climate change is real. We're feeling it, its effects every day.
Some of the challenges that are, that come about when we think about living close to water or near water, places like Miami especially, we talk about experiencing water from all sides. So whether it's from underneath the groundwater and how that affects our water supply, from the west here in Miami, the freshwater flow of the Everglades, we have to consider the protection of that and how that ties to both our drinking water and the health of our ecosystems. And then, of course, from the coast, whether we have to worry about, flooding hazards like tidal flooding or storm surge from hurricanes. And then, of course, from above, when we think about extreme rainfall, stormwater, and the same types of hazards that can come with tropical storms, or just a really intense thunderstorm, which we've been seeing more and more of here in South Florida.
There's also another concern facing South Florida.
The king tides are indeed back. The so-called super king tides are coming.
By late Monday morning, during the peak of king tide, the docks, boat ramp, and a huge part of the parking lot were flooded.
So a king tide is a naturally occurring phenomena. We get our high tides every single day, but at certain times of the year when the sun and the moon align in just a way, the gravitational pull is that much greater, and basically you get a higher than normal high tide. But that becomes more of an issue since we've seen sea level rise about 10 inches over the last 100 years. And so those high tides that naturally occur are getting more and more impactful in communities like this.
This neighborhood used to be ground zero for impacts of king tides. This neighborhood on a beautiful sunny day during a king tide would have been underwater, and people would be moving around with canoes, kayaks, or cars would just be plowing through water. And so this is where the city really started to invest in the infrastructure.
Miami Beach is fortunate enough to be surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean and Biscayne Bay. As we're thinking about the future and climate change and sea level rise, we're needing to look at it from multiple angles. It's everything from increased heat to groundwater rising and tides and storm surge events. So it really is a multi-tiered approach, and we think about resiliency in an integrated way. We look at how we can maximize our projects and programs to have a benefit both today as well as preparing ourselves for the future.
One of those programs includes investing in key infrastructure to make Miami Beach more resilient.
This is the stormwater pumping system. This is where the bulk of the infrastructure is located for this area of the Sunset Harbor neighborhood. Over there you have the generator system. You can see how it's lifted up. And the purpose of the generator system is if the power goes out, the generator will take over with pumping. Typically the power may go out with a storm, and that's when we need the pumps the most. So that makes sure that the system can continue to function even if the power goes out. Over here we have this raised area. This is the electrical system for our pumping structures for the Sunset Harbor neighborhood. Those again are raised so that they can continue to function in case flash floods or anything like that is happening. And then over there, underground, which you can't see, it's open over there. You see some flaps. The pumping system is actually located underground in that hole. The pumps are located down there. There's also water treatment systems. There's a vortex structure which takes out any solids that are located that are in the storm water. There's a settling box that makes sure that any oil rises to the top so that doesn't go out to the bay, and treats the storm water before it gets pumped out to the bay. The space provided for the pumps are larger than the current pumps, and that's intended to ensure that over time, as our demands increase, that there's room to install more capacity for stormwater.
In addition to improving the pump system in Miami Beach, the city also raised the seawalls to help keep the impact of rising sea levels at bay. However, raising the height of the roads and buildings has proven to be most effective.
The road raising infrastructure is really the most important part of the infrastructure that's taken place here in this neighborhood. It's also been the most impactful for residents and for businesses. It's really changed the way the neighborhood functions. It's changed the way on-street parking works, the way sidewalk cafes work, but it allows the neighborhood to survive. So you can see here, this sidewalk has 2 levels. This side over here is the new elevation that we've set for the neighborhood, and this is the height that was selected in order to minimize impacts related to king tides and sea level rise for a long period of time. And then over there you see the old elevation. The old elevation has to be provided to ensure that the older buildings that have their elevations at a lower level continue to have access. We can't block their access. and these buildings don't have sufficient elevation where they could just raise their ground floor, which is one of the new regulations that we're implementing, ensuring new buildings have enough height so that over time they can just raise their ground floor and continue to function. And then what the stormwater pumping system does is it just has to pump the water out of this area as opposed to the whole street whenever there's a king tide. As it relates to the economy for this area, when there's flooding happening, when there's a king tide, the area functions like normal. You don't even know that it's happening. Whereas a few years ago, it would have been underwater and the area would basically cease to function economically.
My name is Elizabeth Fattah Carpenter. I am a resident of the village of El Portal. I'm a managing attorney for the Everglades Law Center, and I am the chair of the Village of El Portal Sustainability and Resiliency Task Force. One of the great benefits of El Portal is that we're on the Little River, or the C7 Canal, but that also, as you mentioned, comes with a lot of challenges related to sea level rise and climate change. And in the last few years, as much of the state and Miami-Dade County have, we're starting to see those issues intensify and becoming more of a problem throughout the year, and something that we're having to grapple with as a municipality as well as a county. In 2020, we actually had 2 flooding events in the village, and part of that is a result of our location geographically and hydrologically within the county. We are at we like to say the drain end of the Little River Canal, and so all the water that drains into the Little River further upstream and further west ends up in the village of El Portal and runs up against essentially a drainage gate at the very end of the river, which is situated in the village. So as a result of that, we had a flood event in Memorial Day weekend, which resulted in significant flooding in the city, in the village that sat in people's lawns for a number of days. And we had another flooding event following the Eta tropical storm towards the end of the year. And both of those events resulted, unfortunately, in the failure of a number of residential home septic tanks, which results in a backup of the septic tanks into the yards, which causes both a human health concern and an environmental concern.
One of the large contributors to the decline of the health of the bay is septic tanks, and the impacts of sea level rise, climate change, heavy rainfall events, any kind of flooding activity that moves that untreated wastewater into our environment and adds the nutrient load to the bay, and that's a contributor to the declining health of the bay. So what my task is with the team that we have assembled here at the Water and Sewer Department is to eliminate as many of those septic tanks as possible, as timely as possible, and get those homes and businesses connected to wastewater systems where their waste will be properly treated and disposed of.
The elevation of the village actually varies very substantially. I think our lowest area is maybe 2.5 to 3 feet, and our highest elevation is 12 feet or over 10 feet. And so these, what are seemingly small changes in elevations have a really significant impact on the residents that live in those various elevations. So in the lower lying areas of the village, I think up to about 4 feet, people were seeing flooding in their yards for 5, 6, 7 days. And that means because we're a city that is still on septic and has not been connected to sewer, that means that our septic tanks are discharging into that flood water that is sitting in people's yards. And so that's been a real problem from an education standpoint, just to let people know that that water is contaminated and not safe, and also from an environmental concern, because all of that flood water eventually drains out into the Little River Canal and drains into Biscayne Bay, which is really the lifeblood of Miami-Dade County.
The real-world consequences of rising sea levels is felt in neighborhoods like Little River. Sabrina Jackson is the site coordinator for the Little Haiti Optimist Club. She's witnessed firsthand the impact flooding has in her neighborhood and on the children.
When there's flooding, the impact for the kids is very severe. Some of them can miss school or not attend the program. We do have a shortened delay and start time because of the flooding.
According to a Pew Charitable Trust report, more than 40% of schools in Miami-Dade County are in a flood zone. Flooding often disrupts student learning, impacts the community, and repairs can strain municipal budgets. Complicating sea level rise is climate gentrification.
The more economically distressed areas of the inner cities are now on very valuable land close to the downtown urban core, and they also happen to be on higher ground. So it's a twofold problem.
There are pressures, and folks are being displaced as we speak, and so I think we have to think really carefully about the types of incentives or disincentives that we offer to developers, as well as the protections against the folks who are living in these areas that are being displaced.
In spite of challenges, residents and local leaders remain hopeful that collaborative and resilient solutions can be found to ensure Miami-Dade County will remain a vibrant community for generations to come.
We're looking with the county and the state's assistance on creating this really complex resiliency plan. But as you know, that the Miami-Dade County is very interconnected. So we need a plan that not only addresses what's happening in the village of El Portal, but what's happening in the entire drainage basin, which affects us and which affects the rest of the county. Because really, at the end of the day, everything drains into Biscayne Bay.
The sea level rise strategy, what it really does is it outlines both a summary of what we know to date based on multiple studies and reports and analysis in terms of our expected impacts. It outlines sort of a framework for how we can adapt, what is the combination of approaches that we can take, including things like elevating buildings or using more green and blue infrastructure. And then it outlines basically a set of 10 key actions and a number of projects that the county is pursuing to tackle this holistic problem of sea level rise.
I do not think that we'll reach that point. I think that the infrastructure investments will be made to make sure that it is livable. There's too much invested here to just let it go underwater. And we'll, as technology evolves, we'll come up with the solutions necessary to make sure that this area will survive.
People are actually working on new ideas, and that there is hope, and that there are jobs that are coming, and that the environment absolutely is the economy, and that we'll get it right.